Welcome to the Cognitive Rampage tonight. Gotta get settled. Have some new technology set up, so was rushing around to get that up. So when you're in that rush mode, you kind of gotta take a second and settle down. But Silano, right?
Yeah.
You know, I've been so anxious about mispronouncing your name.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so easy. You don't want to know my maiden name. That's even worse.
Oh, well, what is it? Now I gotta know.
No.
No? Okay. Well, my guest is Michele Silano.
Lot.
Huh?
Lot?
Ah,
Yeah.
Michele Silano Lot.
Mhm.
Okay. Dietitian extraordinaire, entrepreneur. Read the website for the long listing of acronyms and alphabet and things. I'm excited to have her on the show. With so much nutrition stuff out there, people are bombarded daily, you know. What is nutrition to you?
I think that's a great question. Nutrition is basically what you're going to feed your body. How do you respect your body and what you're going to put inside of it? That's
Yeah,
nutrition to
I'm
me.
not trying to be rude, but sometimes I'll get some Twitter in,
Okay, cool.
and if I get some questions, there's some
Awesome.
people that I know wanted to ask you some questions tonight to be ready. So if I'm avoiding you, please don't judge me as the people in typical society.
Don't worry.
So
The ones that just
yeah,
they can't communicate.
listening.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
apologize. Okay.
That's
So
fine. Don't
please
worry.
proceed about what nutrition is to you.
So nutrition again is what you take in to feed your body. It's not only that, but it's what feeds your soul and feeds your spirit.
Mm.
So nutrition is not just about the food, it's about your whole attitude.
Mm. I know almost cognitive dissonance gets created with certain people in nutrition, that they've tried so many different avenues of weight loss, of tone, of you name it, even muscle gain, that sometimes it creates this cognitive dissonance to where they just quit. I mean, what's the point of over inundated information to where people are so inundated to where it just makes them, you know what, I don't care what the best protein bar is or the best diet, etc. is. I mean, where's that line drawn between separating what's really good nutrition and what's not?
I think that's a really tough question because you have to examine each person differently. That's why you have to go to a registered dietitian or someone who's licensed and who has a lot of experience. Because someone might walk into my office and have a thyroid problem, and that's why they're not losing weight.
Mm.
So it doesn't matter if they go on those HCG shots, if they, go to a really small calorie diet.
Mm-hmm.
Same like a bodybuilder. They may just be thin because their thyroid is off, their metabolism is off.
Mm.
So there's different exams and things that we can do and protocol to examine that. So, you can't, it's not just one magic bullet per se.
Right, it's individualized.
It has to be individualized,
like
right?
therapy and many other things.
Right, absolutely. So you have to look, are they someone who's on the road and all they eat is fast food? Well, maybe that's why they're gaining weight. Maybe they don't eat enough. That could be another reason. Sometimes people don't eat enough, so your body's going to go back to that caveman mentality and store all the fat, right? Because it's saying, feed me, and you're not feeding that person, right?
Right.
So it stores all that fat, usually around the abdominal area, the stomach, so you get that little pot belly, or
Yeah.
you get the roll, the muffin top.
Right.
So it really depends. And then the protein bars, there's so many of them. I mean, some of them are so disgusting.
It's
Yeah,
true.
I mean, even the ones that are really healthy, so it has to be by taste. You have to like food. I think food is something to be enjoyed.
Mm.
Life is really too short to start limiting to any extreme
Yeah.
or to go to any extreme, right?
Yeah, I like that, that balance, when you talk about nutrition, the time that people don't understand that goes into real nutrition, so when people are talking about, well, I'm bored or either I don't have time, when you make food a part of your life like you're talking about, when cooking and shopping and prepping or growing even, when those things become a part of your life, you're in this constant state of cultivation, whether it's cultivating good nutrition or some form of meditation through a slow cooked meal, in a recipe that's all there. And part of that's incorporating your life and loving food rather than opposed to this is just something that I have to, I got to get to and look for the taste and go right into it.
Right.
So much today causes a lot of depression and things. I don't think people realize how much the body does play a role, like you said before, in mind and spirit and that control. What I like to say, like in my theory, I talk about mind, body, and spirit, but when we don't take care of the body, it's funny, I call the body the referee as well, but I call it the referee between the mind and the spirit. So both of them are jockeying for position to run your life. So when you don't take care of the body, you got to fight without a referee. And so when you take care of that body, when you're up to date on your either checkups, your hormone levels, even the
Right.
basics, you place that referee between the mind and the spirit, almost feeding the spirit and calming the mind at the same time, as being such an important aspect in people's lives. But, I'll left turn and go to what's the impact of eating organically as opposed to not. And I don't mean to contrast
Right.
it with fast food eaters versus organic.
No, but like if you go to Publix and you see something, well, first of all, it has to fit within what you can afford. Okay, affordability.
And you hear that a lot. A lot of people, their number one complaint is, I can't eat healthy, it's too expensive.
Right.
Well, is it really more expensive?
No, not necessarily. I think there's a lot of different options that people aren't taking advantage of.
It's just lazy.
One of them is, okay, I went to the farmer's market close by here off of Vanderbilt this Saturday, and I got 3 heads of lettuce for $2. I mean, they were fresh. They were actually organic. They were grown locally. All right? I mean, really nice heads of lettuce. So you have to go to farmers markets.
You got to get out and get confident.
You have to get out. You have to, go out, shop around, just like you would shop for a car, shop for shoes, shop for clothes. Well, be picky about your food. Just don't settle for Publix or one of the local supermarkets. Go someplace.
We're too wrapped in convenient today.
Absolutely.
That convenience of, that's here, I'll stop, I'll grab it, it's quick, we keep moving.
Right.
And that workload, even Tim Ferriss on his podcast the other day was talking about reaching a point of fatigue, of decision fatigue. And I thought it was interesting the way he talks about how we make decisions in our life, but where does decision fatigue, you think, play into people's daily routine of what they eat and choosing what to eat? And how much does fatigue play into that?
Oh, absolutely. Because most people say, well, what am I going to eat today? Okay, chicken again, meat, potatoes. What else do I want to eat? And so sometimes people will come to me to do a menu plan. And then I'll sit down and say, okay, well, let's have some balance. What do you like to eat? And I'll get foods that they enjoy, and we kind of put it together. And when it's put together on like a weekly basis, they seem to adhere to that, comply to those diets, eat better, have more energy, and actually integrate more food groups versus going out and just, okay, I'm going down each food aisle and picking out a particular food. So they get fatigued because they have to think right when they're in that shop. There's like all this pressure. What am I going to eat Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? So maybe making a list, being a little bit prepared, going online. Yeah, get a plan, right? You got to have a plan for everything in life, especially when you're multitasking between if you have a family, your job, your social life. Just taking your own personal time to meditate, like you said, you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
And sometimes it does take a little time, but once you have that plan put together, it makes life so efficient.
That's the routine.
It's less work.
And tapping into it.
Right.
We mentioned earlier about, the thyroid and some other issues about going back to basics. And Dr. Mark Gordon, who floors me, is with me in an attack, or I'm with him, I guess you could say, an attack about fighting returning soldiers with PTSD, etc., with psych meds, immediately throwing antidepressants at them. And what he's discovered is that going simply back to the basics of a hormone test, a simple blood test to check hormones, has been proven to make giant steps in people suffering with PTSD and depression. So going back to those basics, what would that mean in nutrition as far as going back to the basics?
Sure. So basically, when you have depression, that means your serotonin might be low, your dopamine, some of your other norepinephrines, different things like that. Your hormones, your neurotransmitters might be off a little bit. So what do you need? You need proteins, amino acids. And I'm not saying go out and, have a cow, eat a cow, right, or a side of beef.
Right.
But you need to integrate healthy, lean sources of protein. So that could be a combination of, eggs or cheese. It could be hummus, which comes from chickpeas. So beans are a great source. So you don't have to be a meat eater all the time. You can balance it out by having different types of protein. Beans and rice are a perfect protein, right? So you could have that with a salad or some vegetables. But I think that they need to take in. So people with depression usually don't eat well. Why? Because they're depressed. They have no taste for food. They lose that thought. They go into a store.
Does that happen? Absolutely.
Absolutely. You lose taste. And you smell food and it doesn't bring in that sensation I'm really hungry.
You're flooring me. So people suffering with depression actually lose taste of things.
Well, it could be two types of things, okay? They can have depression where they stop eating, right? They restrict.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, you can have anorexia as a result. Just like older people that are in nursing homes. When they're depressed, what happens? They stop eating.
Wow.
So these are signs of depression, right?
So, I mean, that makes sense to me that binge eaters that suffer with depression, they go for those hard sweets, those heavy salts, that
Right.
fast food.
Things that have a taste, things that leave a lasting effect.
Holy
And then
shit.
and then what it does is because it's converted to glucose, it goes right to the brain, right? And they get that high. Just
it's
like
a
if they
drug.
took a drug. Yeah, absolutely. Food is a drug.
So that, I mean, that's how people can create that cycle with, being depressed, a lack of taste biologically, and then running to fulfill it with awful foods that give brain stimulation immediately to modulate that mood immediately.
Right, exactly. And then just think about people when they come off of alcohol addictions or any drug addictions, what do they crave? They crave the sweets.
Mm-hmm.
And most times, I had done a session actually with a group of recovering addicts, and I was telling them if you were addicted to alcohol or some type of opiates, for example, you might have hypoglycemia, which means that your blood sugar levels might drop. And then sometimes they go up. So you have that drop and that rise, that drop and that rise, and you need that sugar. You crave, your body craves that sugar to bring you up so you don't feel that fatigue.
Now,
So you don't feel
is
that
that a
low.
good thing to do?
No, it's not a good thing to do. The best thing to do is actually following like a diabetic type of diet where you have small, frequent meals.
So if you're detoxing per se,
Right.
you want like a diabetic diet.
Absolutely. You want
Why?
small, frequent meals because you want to maintain your blood sugar levels. A lot of times, if they were to test diabetics, if they were to test alcoholics, they would be hypoglycemic, which means low blood sugar times, or they could have high, hyper, but mostly low levels.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, because they're not eating properly, they're skipping meals, and they're just drinking. So there's no nutrition in their foods. So now the body doesn't have a source of creating its form of, glucose that it needs.
It just has tons of sugar.
It just has a lot of sugar, and that's absorbed really quickly into the bloodstream.
What's the one thing you think that's really inhibiting bad nutrition today in the United States?
It's really inhibiting bad nutrition.
Like what's causing it? What's a main ingredient to, you think, bad nutrition?
Marketing. I think marketing. Because if you walk into a supermarket and you see all the boxes at eye level for the kids, all the sugary breakfast treats,
Fucking
everything,
preying on you.
okay, it's right there. What did they put in the end caps? All the crap. Everything. They never put anything really tasty
It's
and
all
healthy.
the shit you see the mom dragging the kid that he's hanging on to on the corner.
Right, all the Entenmann's. Think about Entenmann's. I mean, they're right there in the middle. The $10 of these sugary drinks, okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of bad, I guess it would be good marketing for these brand name companies, but it really isn't. It's a lot of stuff that, it's just to sell. They don't care about health. People don't care about how healthy. It's about the money. It's how much money they can do. It's not about doing good. It's not about reaching populations. I mean, we are at the highest percentages in the U.S. today of obesity. We are an obese
smoking
nation.
now. Isn't the number one killer now?
Absolutely. I mean, from obesity, you get diabetes, you get heart disease, and then from there you get kidney disease, okay? If I pray for people who are on dialysis. I have a really good friend on dialysis, and it is a miserable existence. You have to be hooked up to a machine 3 times a week to be dialysized, or you have to have peritoneal dialysis, which is where you basically every night you get hooked up to a bag.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, that's a horrible way to live your life. There's no purpose then in your life, is there? In your mind you become depressed, and then that's just one thing on top of another thing, and that negativity.
I mean,
just
where
builds.
does the bad nutrition play into mental health status?
Oh my God! Well, like we were just
talking
about.
What's first chicken egg here? I mean, can someone that say is healthy, active, begins to suffer situational depression, finds themselves now eating poorly, etc. What are the biological implications, if any?
Well, let's take postpartum depression. Okay. Postpartum depression, you could be healthy, you have a baby, and all of a sudden you're depressed. What happens? You had this baby, your hormones are really out of whack. You're not eating correctly because you're taking care of your child, and maybe it's your first one, you're nervous, you're watching the baby, you're not really focusing on what your needs are. You don't have anyone to help you, your spouse, or maybe you don't have a spouse, maybe you're a single parent. So now you have to go back to work, you have all this stress. So what's really gonna be lacking in nutrition?
Yeah.
Or maybe you don't have the money. Formula is really expensive these days.
That's true.
Breast milk is best. I'm going to say that breast milk is best. But if you can't do that, then formula is really expensive. You know, it's not very healthy for the baby. And don't do soy. That's the other thing.
No soy.
No soy because it can affect the thyroid of children. So you want to do things that are not soy products.
I think my next question was going to be, what do you avoid at all costs that's out there?
What do you avoid?
What food, what chemical, what... if you had to pick
my
the one.
pet peeve is with genetically modified foods, GMOs.
Okay.
GMOs, they take... Do you know the story about GMOs? So let me
bunch
tell you a
of
little...
them.
Okay, so I'll tell you my favorite. So we have Monsanto. And Monsanto comes in and they own all of these patents on different insect repellents and insect type of, killing agents. And they put these little, drugs inside a seedling. And the seedling is corn, for example, or granola, or soy. And it grows really tall, and there are no weeds around it. Why? Because it has this weed and insect repellent built into the seed. So then we're feeding these products. Maybe we're not consuming it firsthand, but maybe we're feeding it to the cows.
Right.
The cows are eating the corn, or the pigs.
Right. I was going to lead to that part. Keep going.
And then here we are as consumers, we're eating those products.
Right.
And then
is that adding to why babies are bigger?
Oh, absolutely. Babies are bigger. Girls and boys are maturing, having puberty at 10, 11 years old. I mean, I'm older than you, but most females wouldn't have had their periods until they were at least 14, 15, 16 years old. Now, there's 9-year-olds having periods, having babies at 10.
Where do we draw the line between freedom and proper nutrition? I mean, that's the argument. I mean, remember in New York, they were
freedom.
trying to get rid of the giant...
Okay, wait, I want to interrupt you because freedom. So here we have Monsanto and these companies that are doing this kind of stuff. They are not they don't have to put that on a label. No one has to know if a product's genetically modified. In fact, they're not going to tell you.
Really?
Right.
So
you're not going to know.
Required.
No, they're not required to put that. There's no label law that states, unless I'm mistaken, but there's nothing that I know of that says that it has to say it's genetically modified. That's why the marketing now, if you notice, it says non-GMO. Right. So they're taking and utilizing that as a marketing tactic.
Just because, the natural versus organic, right, labeling, just because it says non-GMO, does that really mean non-GMO?
Well, it probably is. Corn is genetically modified. Soy is genetically modified. Some papaya is genetically modified, the Hawaiian papaya, for example. And I'm trying to think, there's something else that's genetically modified that I'm not remembering right now. But,
What's, I was going to say, what is that myth of something that's floating around out there that's supposed to be good for you that's really not? Maybe that's snuck in as this thing. Maybe is it the Atkins diet? Is it what is it that's snuck in?
I think that there's a lot that probably started out as being good, and that people took it what's a good one? The Paleo Diet is a really popular diet. Okay. I don't think it's a bad diet. It's kind of like an Atkins, right? They're not doing carbs and grains. They're doing lean proteins and vegetables, kind of like how they're saying the caveman.
Right.
But people take that to extreme.
So it's the extreme of one another. So it's the
extreme of everything, just like the Atkins diet. People would just eat burgers and fat and everything in fat, and then they would leave out all the carbs.
And they're missing minerals.
Right. You have to have a balance of everything. Everything has to be a balance in life, right?
Right.
We have to find out what is our balance. Now, I'm of the philosophy that not everybody needs to be one particular way. Maybe I do better as a mixed consumer of grains and maybe vegetables and a little protein. Whereas you might do better as just eating protein and vegetables and forget about the carbs because you know how your body is. Like I always advise people journal. Write down when you eat something. Do you feel bloated? Do you get constipation? There's tons of diets. There's one diet out there called FODMAP, FODMAP. And don't expect me to tell you what the acronym is.
FODMAPs?
FODMAPs, yeah.
Okay, FODMAPs.
And this is how and this is how you treat people with irritable bowel syndrome or Crohn's disease. This has been out for a while, but it's gaining some notoriety now. people are watching things like sugars in different foods. The premise is that all these sugars that break down from the food, such as from onions, produces certain sugars. Lactase, or the sugar in milk, for example, causes some bloating. So once people start cutting back on some of these foods, they recognize, wow, I don't have this constipation. I don't have this fogness. I don't feel fatigued all the time because they're eating for their body. We're all so individual. And that's, again, your first question was like, what kind of diets and things? And I'm like, you got to go back to the individual, because we have so many signs and symptoms. And going to someone who understands and has experience with all of these varieties of signs and symptoms can direct you to the right type of diet plan. So, I look at it as a way of life. It's not just a diet. It has to be what you live and breathe. Do I take my kids, people say, oh, you probably never eat a McDonald's. I'm like, yes, I'll eat a McDonald's hamburger sometimes. Do I do it every day? No. Well, I get chicken. Yeah, you know what? I can't restrict my kids. This is real life.
Right.
This is not, I don't live in a bubble.
I gotcha.
But
Louis C.K. does a funny bit about that, about how we shove French fries and McDonald's in our kids' face. We give them caffeine and MSG, and then they run around like crazy, and then we yell at them, and then we hit them, and we tell them to shut up and sit down after you've pumped them full of sugar.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot. You see that passing on of this fast-paced lifestyle onto the children. And what form, I'm going to go hard at it because, fuck it, that's what I do, but it's hard for me not to see overweight children and think automatic child abuse. It's hard. I mean, understand there's ones that aren't medically involved. There's definitely reasons that those things can happen. But I'm talking the morbidly obese child. Generally, see the parent, see the child. But what's that line for you? What's the abuse part when it's French fry after French fry after chicken nugget after Diet Coke or Coke? When does that become borderline abuse to the child?
I think when the parent is no longer mindful about what they're providing to their child. They don't respect that the child needs to have good nutrition in order to function well at school, to be able to behave properly. So if a child has ADHD, sometimes there's anxiety, there's other things involved with this child, and what will they do? They'll just eat. But
if the parent can get a moment of silence, it's here, eat that.
Right.
Here,
you want that cupcake? Hey, sure. I can go shopping.
Right.
I can go shopping.
Road trip. Here's cupcakes. We're at the dinner table. Here's cake.
Right. Just here. But what I found is that if you have like a little snack bowl and you cut up, or you even buy ahead of time, maybe some carrots, some celery, some dip, something fun, some cheese cubes, and just put it in a little bowl or an ice cube tray. Actually, you could fill up little snacks in ice cube trays, like a little nuts, and you have the kid and they're picking out all these foods. They don't really care what they eat, as long as they're putting something in their mouth, because it's kind of like, that nervous energy.
Right.
That's what I've noticed.
You're adding behavior modification.
Right. So they're choosing healthy things, and sure, why do they want the sweets? Because just like the same with the addict, because that's what feeds the brain. That's what their brain is calling for.
So essentially, so again, back to that question, if we just correlated sugar back to chemical and mood modulation with certain foods, where does the line draw with that abuse? When they become not aware, how much or how easy is it for a parent to be apathetic and claim, well, I don't know, it's too expensive, well, it's what I eat. And I've seen to where overweight parents, in order not to be alone, or think even they've been molested or something as a young woman, for looking good, will pass that on to their child and overfeed them to make them unattractive, so they're not. So again, where does that line begin to draw?
Or the opposite happens too, where the mother has an eating disorder.
You see this fitness drive home life.
And all she's doing is working out 6 days to 7 days a week, eating, what are you watching? Making everything so healthy. There's not a bit of fat. So the child grows up.
You see those moms.
Oh, I see those moms.
What's that line? What's the line of the mom that's like, holy shit,
and you
give
see,
them a
and you look
fucking
at them,
candy bar.
and you look at them and you say, wow, you need some help. You really need some help because it's not healthy.
We're talking about both ends of the spectrum. Those that overfit. I mean, we keep circling back to this, is this balance. And, coming back to the overfit parent, I mean, what's the age to really start putting a child in a type of fitness environment? Because obviously, let's face it,
I mean,
kids aren't what they are today. We don't spend outside all day until the streetlights come on.
Absolutely.
You know, so
Yeah.
what's that? What's that? Well, I mean,
Well, they have to. You know what? Maybe parents need to start working in some outside time. Maybe parents need to spend some time with their children. Okay, not just. I mean, right?
I love it.
I mean, not just
back to the basics.
Yeah,
Maybe you should turn the fucking TV off.
Right,
and
turn
take
it off.
your kids
Right,
somewhere.
take your kids someplace. There's a fair in Fort Myers. Go up there. There's a carnival. Go to a farm.
Hell, there's
Show,
a boardwalk.
go to the beach.
Yeah.
Go to the beach. When was the last time you took a couple of hours to spend some time with your kids?
Right.
Life is so short, and we're rushing through this life, and we're not stopping to smell the roses. So God forbid if we stop to eat correctly, right?
Right.
I mean, really. So you can't expect things from people that don't have those goals in mind, right? They're just making it from day to day, and I get it. You know what? Not everyone's had an easy life. I haven't had an easy life. You know, you haven't. We've had a lot of challenges.
Right.
But what sets people apart is when they step back and they say, "What? Stop playing the freaking victim. What can I do to make a difference?" So when people come to me and they say, "Well, I can't eat right because I'm working all the time. I have this." Well, let's figure out a way that you can.
Yeah.
Let's plan ahead of time. Like I do these things called salad in a jar. Did you ever hear of that?
You know you can say fucking on this show. Too,
Yeah, I don't, but I don't really curse.
It's my job to convert everyone.
To convert everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
I try to get one fuck out of everybody.
Okay, I'll try.
Because they're all way more professional than me, and I admire that. So if I can get them to stoop to my level for a second.
Just for a second.
Just for a second, because you say freak and I hear fuck, and I go, just say fuck.
Okay, I'll say fuck next
time. So what's your salad in a jar?
So salad in a jar. I got this off Pinterest, by the way, which I thought,
anybody to give credit for?
No, I don't know. There's tons of people. So I can't really give credit to anyone, but there's like all these different Pinterests and they have all these different recipes. But the best one I found was salad in a jar. You go on a Sunday, you buy your lettuce, your carrots, your tomatoes, whatever, black olives, you like chopped ham, whatever you like, cheese. Buy all these ingredients and have the kids each take a jar.
Huh.
And then the first layer is like your meats. The next layer is your veggies.
That's
and then
cool.
on the top is your type of lettuce.
That's
You
cool.
close it in a mason jar. It can last up to 5 days. It doesn't get moldy, doesn't get mildewy. Now, some recipes will call for like Italian dressing or, some dressing. I say don't put that in because it will get a little moisture from there.
Yeah.
I've done the trial, so I've tested all this out. But you could do yogurts. So you can do a yogurt with berries, and you know what? If you have kids that come home, you're working, they can grab a salad in a jar and eat a salad. There you go.
As opposed to
to chips,
random marketing
right?
attacks
As
on
opposed
children.
to the chips, as opposed to the cookies.
Mm-hmm.
There are places for all of that, yes. But you know what? When a kid comes home, they're hungry.
Quick.
Okay.
Quick. I got a 14-year-old, and let me tell you, if it's in there and it's grab and eat, it's gone.
That's right.
So if you only put what's there to grab and eat, like a piece of fruit or
right.
an apple, because that's still grab and eat.
Absolutely.
And that's the parental responsibility too. Of you're the one buying the shit and putting it in the damn pantry,
right.
and allowing them to eat it. And I I'm sorry to keep circling back to that abuse shit, but for me it borderlines it. It really does.
I don't. It's hard for me to say abuse.
You're giving them a way out because it's lack of education on their part potentially.
It's hard for me to call abuse because for abuse you have to really say or prove that the parent really wanted to hurt their child or wanted to do something.
Sure.
Okay, so
well, let's go with neglect.
So maybe neglect might be a neglect or just not being mindful.
Because if you don't
about
feed your kid for 5 days,
that's
and
abuse,
neglect.
right?
So if I overfeed my kid for 5 days, what's that difference?
Well, overfeed are you overfeeding then
because the binge,
right? Are you forcing the food, or are you creating a situation in the household where the kid is depressed or the kid is anxious that now they're eating so much food because they have to just kind of get themselves away from that situation? Anything good?
Yeah, actually.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
From Sean Zernis.
Hey, Sean.
He said, do you think Monsanto knows that GMOs will affect humans in harmful ways since they won't show the research in public?
Absolutely. Come on. Everyone who works for Monsanto has worked for the government at some point, and vice versa.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you didn't know
Hold
that?
on. No.
Yeah.
So now I have this Goldman Sachs Wall Street thing going on here with the government. So now, what?
Yeah, so people that have worked in the government, in the Department of Agriculture, in the FDA, have also worked for Monsanto. There's actually a few good movies. One of them is like Food, Food, .inc or yeah,
Food
.inc,
Inc., right?
Food Inc.
Yeah, Food Inc. Yeah, I've seen that.
And that one shows you. They actually show you the people. I don't remember the names, but they show you those people, so they do know what's going on, and that's what's scary. GMOs just came about relatively within the past 10, 11 years, which correlates, I think, to the rise of autism, Asperger's, ADHD.
Wow.
Now, is it, again, the chicken, like you said, is it the chicken comes before the egg or vice versa,
Sure,
right?
sure.
So is it that they are better at detecting these mental illnesses,
Holy
or
shit.
is it that the food is creating this and then we're coming up with these diagnoses? Because when I was younger, Adam, there were always a couple of kids in the class. Yeah, they were a little off.
Yeah.
Today, half the kids in the class are just, they have something going on. And that's not the parents' fault. That's something in the genes. That's something that's going on with the food, no matter how good you eat.
And you're saying they knew this, putting it out anyway.
Absolutely. They knew.
Like drug companies
nobody
know it's going to kill people, but
Sure.
they do it anyway.
I mean,
it
look at
doesn't
these
hit the
drug companies, right? And you see them, they have like 50 different side effects. Or like there's some drugs out there that are meant for one thing and they're used for 20 other things.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
so they know, they have all the research, they have brilliant people working on all this stuff.
Ingredient labels. Should we fucking have warning labels if they have things like GMOs on them?
Well, do you know that in Europe, there's a lot of food that is not permitted in the United States?
What the fuck?
Yeah, so you can go out and, have like mac and cheese, a certain type of mac and cheese. It's not permitted with certain ingredients in England, but it is permitted in the United States.
Wow.
And that's because we have lobbyists. And lobbyists, some of them are good, and some of them fight and advocate for the common citizen, and others advocate for these multi-million-dollar corporations. And the problem is they usually win because they can pay for the better attorneys. They have more funding, they have more financial backing.
Mm-hmm.
So they can squelch all the voices of the populace. And what I try to do, I have a charity organization called seedsthatchange.org. Seedsthatchange.org. And what I do is I try to educate the children and the parents, anyone who wants to learn, okay, is free to email me or call me, let me know. And what I do is I set up little classes, and I go and I educate the families on how to eat better, what fruits are, what kind of things can they produce at home. You know what? We live in the great state of Florida. Why can't people have a little garden in their backyard? Why can't they have some pots
great
with,
state of Florida, and I can't grow marijuana in my backyard.
Well, that's another topic.
We can't walk down marijuana.
No, we're not going down that way. But, there's certain things with food. So if we educate the children and the children start telling their parents, hey, you know what? I had this really cool tangerine in school today, or pineapple or something.
Right.
Let's have that. That was really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
The parents will buy that instead of buying the cookies and the chips and the crap. They'll buy something that's really healthy.
Yeah.
But we have to educate. Through education, we empower. We give people the strength to stand up, to fight against what's not right. I mean, we really are taking.
Is this your fight? What's your fight, Michelle? And how can the viewers help you with your fight?
Well, my fight is, my goal is to try to reach out to as many people as I can to educate them that there are ways that we can eat healthy. I like old school things. I like to go back, and I always tell people the story, those who remember when we used to go to like the Wonder Bread store, buy a loaf of bread.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was white Wonder Bread. I mean, when I was growing up, we didn't have wheat bread. We didn't have all this stuff.
Sugary goodness.
Right, we just had Wonder Bread. But you put that Wonder Bread on your counter, it would last 2 to 3 days. And then it would kind of go moldy. Now you can take out bread and leave it on your counter, even the ones that say no preservatives, and it'll last what?
2 weeks?
2 weeks,
yeah.
Right. 10 to 12 days, 14 days sometimes. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong. Look at the whole thing with the ketchup, right? They had to take out the high fructose corn syrup, right? So
Right.
somebody got on the bandwagon for that.
It's like, do it as cheap and as unhealthy as possible until we get caught. And until enough people have died, got cancer, or grew a tail.
Right.
And then we'll be proactive about doing something. So, again, what's the passion? What's the mission? To just inform, educate.
I think my goal is to inform and educate as many people as that want to listen and want to learn.
And how can they do that with you? What's
they can go on my websites. So I have the virtualrds.com, and I have seedsthatchange.org, and I have information on that.
What's the first website again?
The virtual RDS.
Virtualrds.com.
RDS.com, yeah.
Okay.
And that's more of kind of like a well-rounded, like all the things that I do, and I have a blog on there. And then Seeds That Change is about the charity and the organization that my husband and I started to really advocate. Like in our backyard, we just planted 12 different fruit trees. So we have tropical fruits. We have garden boxes.
There used to be agriculture in high school, and they pulled that class isn't offered anymore. At some schools it is. But so they pulled that. I mean, they used to teach kids how to plant something and grow it. You would look at the human experience and think, one thing you may want to teach a human being is how to plant something and grow it, be that food most importantly. But no, we should probably pull that out of the schools because it's too expensive,
right,
to teach our kids.
I mean, farmers are such hardworking people. People don't realize how tough it is to grow a crop and raise it to maturation and bring it to market. And they're not recognized for that. And then the people that make the money aren't the farmers. It's the people in the supermarkets.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Because the farmers get paid pennies. And sometimes they have to use these seeds that really aren't the best seeds because that's what they're mandated to use. Okay, that's what they have no choice. They have to use some of these corn seeds with, GMOs.
Why?
Because if they buy the other one, it's like probably triple times the money, and they can't afford that. So they have to grow things that grow fast and quick, so they can make money. They have to feed their families.
That question puzzles me: is how is something that's organic, that's grown using less shit, is more expensive than something that's grown using more shit?
Because that's how it's marketed.
So it's the marketing.
It's the market, and they probably do
and
have to
people
pay
willing
more.
To pay it.
Yeah, and you know what the thing too is to become organic. This is a local farmer told me this a couple years ago. To be organic, they have to go through a lot of bullshit, documentation, and paperwork. Okay, to become certified organic. So what a lot of people will do is they will be organic, but they just don't have all the documentation to prove it. So you have to ask.
Can they market it then?
They can't market it as organic, and that's one of the problems. So they can sell it as natural as they can
get. But unless you're willing to go through all the white tape
and pay a lot of
pay
money,
a bunch of money, you
Absolutely.
Can't use the organic
So the government makes it really difficult for people to do the right thing.
So what we're looking at is increasing costs due to the white tape in the way of the distributor.
Right, and then you have to be careful with some food products that come from overseas. Because in China, in Indonesia, in places, definitely Asia, the Asian countries, they have no restrictions. Just like in South America, Chile, they use tons of pesticides. So you have to know where your fruits and vegetables are coming from.
So imported foods from Asia and Chile and places like this are not places that they're not governed. You're not seeing
local.
FDA,
Support
EPA.
Support your local farmer. Go to farmers markets. Okay, they get to know you.
And it's fun. It's something
and
it's fun.
Do. And you can do picks. So you can go and you pick your own fruits and vegetables. Bring your kids to pick strawberries, to pick tomatoes.
Imagine that day of where we used to have to go to market, grab what you needed to cook dinner that night.
Right.
So you would take your kid with you. You would teach them, all right, we got to get this. This is how you know this is good. Right. Now it's just like I have to go to this place where they're going to give me a plastic bag full of stuff where it's all lined up neatly.
Right.
Why our kid is doing this, so he'll stay quiet or she'll stay quiet. They learn nothing.
Right.
And, like going back to basics, metaphorically, I love to go back to basics and say, listen, this is the Serengeti. This is fucking desert out here. And you're going to release your child out there. And there's things that eat you, and there's things that will kill you if you eat it. And we have skipped that part of training with our child. The basics of going, here's how you don't get eaten. Here's what you eat and how to eat when you're out there. and it's just passed by.
Well, parents today, I'm sorry, but when I was raised, and probably when you were raised, you were taught to have manners. Your parents taught you to say please and thank
Well,
you.
it's that or get smacked in the
Right.
mouth. So.
Your parents taught you to have appreciation if somebody gave you some, oh, thank you so much, things like that. Well, hopefully. Maybe not. I don't know. I was always taught, you got to be gracious.
Well, it was be gracious or else.
Okay.
When you do things out of or else, it's a little different.
Right, but you still heard it. You still knew about it. Today, kids, again, it comes back to parenting. I think a lot of it is parenting. And parents really aren't there for their kids. I don't know, maybe they're out on their own la-la land. Because sometimes I really question, when I meet some kids and they're eating 3 foods. They'll have pizza, mac and cheese, and maybe grilled cheese.
Staples, right?
Okay,
grilled
and that's all they eat.
The worst shit you can eat.
And I'll say, well, I'm making this. You want to try some guacamole? Oh, what's that?
Teach them how to cook it.
And so
I'll
say grab a chip and and try something. So I think that it's just really exposure. We're not exposing our kids, and it doesn't take a lot of money to do that.
We got another question.
Cool.
What are your thoughts on gluten-free versus gluten-filled diets, and do you think it affects us in an adverse way?
Okay, that's a great question because gluten-free is really, really out there now. It depends. Again, it's individual. I think that it does affect certain medical conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, any kind of inflammatory diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, IBS, Crohn's disease. Some people feel with ADHD or even depression because everything that's gluten does convert into sugar. So again, we feed that sugar aspect, right?
Yeah.
And we don't have necessarily the enzymes or sufficient amounts of enzymes to break down the gluten. Glutens these days are going to be your wheat products, okay, and or fillers to fill up the product, the food product, because remember, we're not dealing with 100% pure items anymore.
You're talking about cut, right?
Yeah.
We got to cut up the product a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah, we gotta fill it up a little bit, right? Because that makes it cheaper. Okay, and a lot of things are really glutinous. What I found is, like, for example, you have to see how your stomach feels. Again,
how does one check it to know? I mean, what does someone do to know if gluten
there's a blood test. Well, there's a blood test that you can ask your physician to do. There's also
like a gluten blood test.
If you're allergic to the certain antibodies. Okay, so our bodies will produce antibodies to the gluten itself. So there's a way of testing for that. Then some people do have a medical reason. It's called celiac disease. Celiac disease is when someone is really allergic to gluten.
Right.
So God forbid they have it, they will have symptoms of diarrhea, like a Crohn's disease. Yeah, they'll get really sick. Generally with a scope and endoscopy, the doctor will be able to look at your small intestine, and sometimes they do a biopsy or they look at it and to see if, your cilia or your little wave-like fingers are flat or are they standing up. If they're standing up, that means that you don't have the celiac, and if they're flat, then you do.
So what is the gluten rule then? Is individually based on how much it may or may not affect you?
I think that we eat, overall in this country, we eat way too much gluten. Everything, from soy, that you're putting on your Chinese food that has gluten, okay, which also is GMO.
So yeah, the Chinese food is bad. Soy.
No, but the soy, right, is GMO. So now we're having gluten and GMO stuff. So combination of that. So which one is it? And then we have the food products, pastas. We eat a lot of pasta. Come on.
Sure.
Pastas, breads, pizzas, macaroni and cheese, all of these.
Every American food that exists
has a lot of gluten, whereas years ago it didn't. We had more ethnically diverse foods growing up, I think, versus now. It's more mainstream. If you go on a trip with your family and you stop at, where are you going to stop? Wendy's, McDonald's, right. Now you don't really have a lot of choice. Everything's the same.
You don't have a lot of healthy choice. You have tons of choice the other way.
Right. But to answer the gluten-free, I think that you have to really do a journal, and you have to see, is it the gluten foods that are affecting you? Is it causing you increased flatulence, for example? That's far farting, for everybody who doesn't know what that is.
Even that was hard to say on this show.
I
Come
know.
on.
Oh, I'm so shy. Okay, so okay, so if you notice that you're really farting a lot, and that's a sign. Bloating, your stomach's distended, it's coming out to you, you can't even buckle your pants after you eat a pizza, or you notice that you have diarrhea, or opposite, you can have some constipation as well. You have some brain fog, you feel really tired when you eat certain foods. Well, you know what? It's easy to eliminate. Try eliminating the gluten. Do more fruits and vegetables
So it
and
really
things like
gets
that.
to a trial and error to where
Yeah, I really think so. Now, there's a lot of products that say gluten-free. Well, yeah, duh, they're going to be gluten-free because they're made from rice or they're made from corn, which is gluten-free.
So they're just adding the gluten-free
right.
just to get
That's
you.
just another marketing
Like a
tactic.
rice cereal, for
Yeah,
example.
I laugh, right. And I'm like, yeah, check cereal is gluten-free. Yeah, because it's made from rice or it's made from corn.
Just preying on them.
Okay, and they just hopped on the bandwagon, and that's how they're marketing their products.
So marketing, again, it's
Yeah.
funny. I wrote a paper in school, and the downfall of human society, and my lethal weapon was marketing. I wrote extensively about how when we realized marketing, we basically ruined our psyche once we started that. So that being said, well, we got about 14 left on the show,
Okay.
which is probably not enough to cover this subject, but supplements.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Good, bad, yes, no. Protein supplements. Now, I use onnit.com from Joe Rogan.
Okay.
That's where I order all my shit. We talked about protein bars earlier. It's funny, in my research, I found the best bar on the market that's better for you is one of the first ones that ever came out, the basic power bar.
But that's just so. I don't
right?
like the taste, but it's gross.
Right,
yeah.
but it was the first Laffy Taffy peanut butter bar.
Yeah.
But onnit.com, they make Aubrey Marcus and Joe Rogan. They make these warrior bars, which is buffalo. It's an old Native American recipe, and I'm biased. I'm Native American, so. And by the way, that's why I was referring to it as white tape, not red tape.
Okay.
My brother
Now I
made a
get it.
comment a
Okay.
long time ago in front of some old politicians about that. So that's what I do. But
That's cool.
you know, we're so inundated with this supplement, that supplement. What's the line? What's the damage? It's so open-ended.
Well, supplements for me are really diverse. So we have supplements such as multivitamins and vitamins. So that's one type of supplement. Okay, and I think it has its place. A multivitamin is basically an insurance policy. Depending on the type of multivitamin you're going to get, if it's a one a day, well, it's going to have really small micro amounts of every kind of
So those
nutrient.
micronutrients that
So
you may be missing.
No, micro amounts. So it might have like a vitamin A, but it's going to have like 1,000, you know, which is really tiny because it's one pill. So how much can they really fit into one pill? Versus some of these multivitamins that you take 3 to 6 of them a day is going to be more extensive and be much more complete. And you may or may not need that depending upon your diet. So if you're eating a healthy, balanced diet, you may only need to supplement with certain things. What I've discovered doing, I'm really big into lab testing. When someone comes to see me, I always say, well, I want you to have some blood work, or at least bring some old blood work, recent blood work that you've had done, and let's take a look. So I'm looking for things, I look at their thyroid, because if their thyroid's out of whack, I usually look at vitamin D. Okay, because vitamin D is also out of whack. People say, how can vitamin D be low, or how can I be so deficient in vitamin D? Well, think about it. No one's going outside as they used to. If they are going outside, they're wearing sunscreen.
I can hear Dr. Rhonda Patrick right now freaking out. For all of you listening, Dr. Rhonda Patrick is a vitamin D fighter. She's just an amazing woman. Just great. But her thing is vitamin D. She links it to depression. She links it to so many things.
I mean, it's not just about the bones anymore. It's anti-cancer, right? It's immune system.
So sun is anti-cancer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But you have to know what your limitations are. I mean, back in the day, I used to go out with baby oil, any kind of oil, and just and burn myself. That's not healthy, okay, to get that tan. But being outdoors, 20 minutes riding your bike, you know, that's okay. And
What's the limit of vitamin D daily, you think? What is it? I don't know.
Everybody's different because when you're deficient, they'll put you on 50,000 IUs. So what I personally take is about 1,000 IUs a day, 1,000 to 2,000 a day.
Okay.
If you have a thyroid condition, which I do, I don't absorb or metabolize my vitamin D as well as someone else who doesn't have that. Because that all, and I'm not an endocrinologist, so I'm not even going to go there, but there's something with the way that it's absorbed and utilized in the system, because vitamin D is a hormone, by the way.
Right, okay.
So for women, it's really vital because we have tons of hormones going around, and you know that if your hormones are out of whack, what's going to happen to most women? They get depression.
Depression, right.
So you see how it's all like this little vicious cycle?
And it's all natural. We haven't once talked about psych meds. We've covered depression and so many other things, and not once out of our mouth came Abilify, Latuda, or all this other BS medication.
Now, this is my opinion about meds. I think medication does have its place, just like we are one of the best countries in the world for I mean, everything has its place, right?
Like gluten for me. That's where
I mean, listen, you know, you can have gluten sometimes if it doesn't bother you, but if it's something bothers you, maybe it's a combination of, maybe it's not the gluten and it's the pizza, the cheese in the pizza, maybe you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
As we get older, we have less enzymes. So the older you are, the more intolerant. I wasn't gluten intolerant when I was in my 20s, but now that I'm, 25, I'm
with you.
Okay. I am. Because the older you get, your body, it's a machine. It's worn down, it breaks down, it's, needs a little repair.
Well, that's where those supplements begin to come in.
Right.
Where does testosterone fit in with this? Where does the hormone replacement therapy start to come in with this?
So testosterone for men, okay, is very, in my opinion, is crucial. And a lot of doctors, and I'll tell you why.
Get them. You sound like the doctor I've been listening to.
Because it affects not only cardiovascular, but it affects your mind, right?
So the testosterone has direct effect on mind. And let's clarify some things for some people too. A lot of men link a low testosterone directly with not being manly.
Right.
So many people avoid getting these things tested, etc. There's no way. I'm masculine. And Dr. Joe Rogan show, etc. That some of these amazing UFC fighters, are testosterone deficient or are low in it. So I'm helping them clarify that just because you're low in it doesn't mean that you're this girly man person.
No.
But that range is what? The range is somewhere between 200 and 1100 is where you want to fall into, somewhere in there.
Right.
So being tested and falling into the 2s, 3s,
I don't know
and
the
4s.
exact. Yeah, that one I can't. You probably know more than me on that one.
But that's my point. Is what you're saying.
But I do know that it affects. It totally affects. That's okay. We're still on, right?
Yeah.
I know that it affects not just your libido, but it affects everything else. Your cardiovascular. That's why men have heart attacks.
I mean, that doctor was linking it to PTSD and depression.
Absolutely, it can
insomnia.
be. It's a hormone. Hormones, just like women. Come on, like we were going back to postpartum depression. When you have low estrogen, low progesterone, a woman goes through menopause. Men go through menopause as well. Male pause.
What?
Yeah, men go through that too. I think we
cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance.
But they do.
What age is that about?
I would probably say, just like women, probably in their 50s. Right? Isn't that the time when they look for the younger girlfriends and they get the red Corvettes?
I think that's always happening for most men.
No, but really, that's the joke.
Sorry, guys.
But that's a joke. But I do think that testosterone has its place. I'm a big supporter of bioidentical hormones. I remember my mother shoved the book. Suzanne Summers wrote a book about bioidentical hormones like about 15 years ago, and I started laughing because I remember her on Three's Company and with like that thing, the Thigh Master, which I have one, and I do, and it does work. But it's I remember laughing, and I read her book, and I said, wow, she really makes sense. She makes sense about what she's talking about. And then my mother started using it, and she's in her 70s, and I said, wow, I notice how it's helped her, okay? And then I recommend it to other women. Sometimes I have women, and they're so depressed about their weight, and they can't lose weight, and then we look at everything.
What advice would you give that woman, the one that is depressed and can't find that motivation? What is that woman or man, what's that first step?
The first step is to go get your hormones tested, your DHEA. If you're a man, you get the male, hormones. They have male hormone panels. They have female hormone panels, and your thyroid. And let me just clarify about the thyroid, because I'm really, really into that piece of our body, that full metabolic panel. you need to not only get your TSH, which actually comes from your pituitary gland. It's not a measure of your thyroid hormones per se. It's a measure of how your pituitary gland is functioning via your thyroid hormones.
Wow.
Okay? So you need to test your T3 is one hormone we produce from the thyroid. Your T4 is another hormone we produce. Then we have something called the reverse, the little R, T3. And what that is a reverse, so it's a checks and balances of how your T4, which turns into T3, is utilized, okay? So it tests how much is actually being produced and utilized in your system, something along that way. And from what I'm told from different doctors, endocrinologists say your TSH should be under 2, between 1.5 and 2. They like to see about 2. So if you have it above the 2s, like in the 3 range, 3.5 or higher, you're hypothyroid, which means that you probably have a hard time losing weight, rather. Okay, when it's lower, then you're hyper. And both have side effects, and it's very, very important that you get that tested. That would be my first thing that I would say.
On both sides of that, what foods with thyroid issues should people avoid if it's low? On opposite ends of that,
Sure.
what should be avoided, what should be added?
To avoid, if you have a thyroid problem, you want to avoid
It's not hypo.
Yeah, well, if you have hypothyroid, for example, there's also something called Hashimoto's thyroiditis. I don't know if you know what that is.
Nope.
So let me go there and then I'll talk about the foods.
Okay.
So Hashimoto's thyroiditis, a lot of women and men don't realize that they have this problem. They start feeling that sluggish, that brain fog. They go to the doctor. Their TSH is within normal range. The doctor's like, oh, you have a thyroid problem. Just go stop eating those chips. You need to have a special antibody test for that. It's called TPOs, thyroid peroxidase. And it's an antibody. So your thyroid is actually attacking itself. It's an autoimmune disease. So this autoimmune disease, eventually, if it's not controlled or, rehabilitated through diet and exercise, it will turn into hypothyroid.
Wow.
So this comes about as a result of stress.
Big killer.
So stress will change your thyroid, okay?
Wow.
And
so there's this limit that our
Right.
body hits of a stress limit that
Right.
can flip a thyroid problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. So some women get it. It's very, very common for women in their 40s to have this diagnosis because they went through childbearing. Maybe they had 3 or 4 kids. That's a lot of stress, not just on the body, but mentally, right? Maybe
And
they
the
had
rest
a
of their
significant loss. Maybe they lost a spouse. And that
So you
was a
add
trigger.
situational
Right,
to it, too.
situational, right. Environmental. So it could be any of these number of factors. And then, of course, it's always escalated if you have thyroid, a family, history of thyroid disease
Add
in
the
your
genetic
family.
implication.
Right.
So what foods on either end does someone
So
avoid?
cabbages, okay, so you want to avoid cabbages, Brussels sprouts, lima beans.
Wait, all this shit that's supposed to be good for you.
Right, but if you have a thyroid,
Wow.
foods rich with iodine. You don't want a lot of iodine-rich foods necessarily, especially if you're on some of these medications.
Everything you listed are 4 foods that I think are disgusting.
Oh,
that
but
are
I love
great
them.
for
I
you.
love Brussels sprouts.
Well, they're great for you. And so when someone that doesn't know that they're
Yeah.
suffering from a thyroid issue, which is adding to weight gain,
Right.
and they try to eat healthy, they're eating 4 of the fucking things they shouldn't be eating.
Right. And I did that actually for a long time. I love cabbage. I love lima beans. I love Brussels sprouts. And then one of my friends, who's an endocrinologist, when he looked at my lab, he's like, oh, no wonder your T3 is out of whack. Have you been eating a lot of these? I said, yeah, that's what I love. And he's like, cut back a little bit. And I had to adjust.
And then you felt that adjustment in your mood?
And I felt that adjustment. In the mood, not necessarily overall. Because everyone suffers from a bit of depression. You get down in the dumps. For me, it was more the fatigue. I was really tired. I couldn't get my ass out of bed in the morning kind of feeling.
What is that nutrition? I cut you short. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay.
There's so much I want to work into this hour, so keep going. Like
Okay.
you're
So
you're
those
flooding me, and I
those
love
are
it.
the foods. Just eating a balanced diet basically will support a healthy
So avoid
nutrition.
those 4 awful foods.
Yeah,
but
I mean, there's a few other ones, but basically those are the main ones. Broccoli, low on the broccoli as well. I don't need too much broccoli.
So these things that
those
are
the
good for
ones.
you, if you have a thyroid issue, we need to avoid.
Yeah, you need to watch out. Yeah.
I think education is the
So
key.
education really is empowering.
Let me. Whoa. All right. Missing things. Yes, Dr. Gordon. Thank you for bringing it back up. I couldn't remember. On Joe Rogan's show. I take probiotics, but don't take vitamins. If I started taking vitamins, what one should I look? What one should I look like? B12, etc.
Okay, so I love that you're taking probiotics. I think that's awesome. Getting back to the gluten-free, that's definitely one. I love a few different brands. Just look for one that's shelf stable for the probiotics. Don't buy the ones that are refrigerated because you may be paying too much, because there's no guarantee that when it came out of the factory and it was put on a truck that it was refrigerated from that point anyway to the store. Okay, which then it lost all its potency.
So your brand name that you like?
So there's a couple of brand names. One of them is a little more expensive. It's called Dr. Ohiro's Professional Probiotics. I sell those, and on my website. But those are really good. Okay, those you can take around. I call them my little green pills. When I have a stomach ache, I bite them, and actually it helps to relieve the stomach ache.
What?
Yeah. And it's just something, they actually tell you that in the instructions. I had a holistic doctor in New York City, and, that's how he would say, just take some of these green pills, and they really do work. But not everyone can afford those, because they are kind of on the pricey end. But then there's other ones, just make sure it's shelf stable. That would be my main thing, because I don't want to say one is bad or one's good. Just make sure it's shelf stable.
Okay, that's what we got to look for.
Because there's different, right? Because there's also ones that have like millions of this brand and that strand. There's lactobacillus. There's different types of probiotics. Just find one that has a few strands that are at least a million, because it's the quality. It's not how many gazillion bacteria are in the pill. It's how many strands are in there that really makes an effect. Okay?
Good to know.
So that's, you have to be a little particular when you do read through that. And then as far as, what was the thing we were talking about, the vitamin B, the multivitamin, and things like that?
He was talking about
okay,
B12,
so B12 you always want to buy separately. You never want to have that in your multivitamin, because B12 is best absorbed in your bloodstream. That's why older people, they will get, or anyone who can't absorb, someone who has gastric bypass, for example, you should always have it as a shot. Okay, because that way it goes right through the bloodstream. Now, I take it under the tongue, called sublingual. In fact, I try to get all of my vitamins. I use a line called Superior Source vitamins, and they're all they're all sublingual. So and I think they're great. Sublingual you can give to your kids, first of all, if you have a problem swallowing.
You take these daily? Is this a regimen?
I have a certain regimen. I don't take a multivitamin because I have a pretty good diet. Okay.
So
what I do take is I take my probiotics daily. I take it in the morning. I take it at night. I use a product called Intestinal Movement if I have some problems going to the bathroom. It's a really natural product. It's all organic. The company is out in the Midwest, and I'm sorry I forgot their name, but it's a really good product. And they have a line of other products. I do that. I do my vitamin D daily. I do my sublingual B12 daily. I do something, what's my other one? I'm trying to think through my things, and that's probably about it. I don't really do much more, because I do my blood testing. Because I do my blood testing, so I take.
How often are you checking on that, and how often should someone check?
I usually check every 3 months.
Every 3 months.
I check every 3 months, and there's sites. There's a really good organization called lifeextension.org, and they're out in Fort Lauderdale. Now, they are medically backed. There's a lot of researchers, people from all different facets of medicine who come together.
For everybody else who's writing
it down. It's lifeextension.org. It's LEF.org. Okay? And you can get a cheap membership. They also sell supplements. They have a magazine that comes out with great, great articles on connections of things that nobody's talking about till 10 years later. They talk about all these different supplements, how things affect your body, what you should be taking. Plus, they have a help center you can call. Best thing is they have blood tests. Twice a year, they give 50% off all their blood tests. So I go and I get the female panel, the weight loss, all these different things. I get everything tested for 50% off. Yes, I pay out of my pocket, but I think it's a hell of a lot cheaper than sometimes if you don't have really good health insurance.
Being preventative.
Yeah, being preventative. I think you have to be your own doctor. You have to say, hey, why is this high? Why is this low? And ask that specific question to your doctor. The other thing that I couldn't remember, which is to help my memory of all things, is called, I went to the doctor a few years ago, and she tested me when I was having all these symptoms of fatigue and forgetfulness, and, you know, I had a traumatic event that happened to me. So just, I really wasn't acting very well. I wasn't very healthy. So she tested me for something called pregnenolone. And the doctor, so it came back really, really low. She goes, no wonder you can't remember because you're deficient. So I have to take a little pill called pregnenolone
And why
every
are you
day.
deficient in that?
Just it could be
Just
hormonal.
genetic, just hormonal?
No, it could be hormonal. It could be. She said I had adrenal fatigue, which was the step before the thyroid, kind of just going kaput, right, from my Hashimoto's. So she was giving me all these products to help support my adrenal. Natural holistic. Like there's rhodiola. There's different herbs that one can take. Holy basil is a tea. I mean, there's so many different things to support your adrenals, because that's where the cortisol, when you become stressed, your cortisol levels are increase, and then they just kind of, they fatigue. They can't support, just like in PTSD, right? You're so tense all the time. So I think a lot of soldiers sometimes may suffer from some form of adrenal fatigue. And that causes depression then.
Right up Dr. Gordon and his hormonal issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's all connected. So I take pregnenolone. So when I went to my physician, who I love, she's a great doctor, she had to look it up because she didn't know what pregnenolone was. So I had to educate my doctor on what pregnenolone was.
My God.
As well as a couple of other hormonal tests that I was interested in taking. And she's great because she's like, hey, no problem. Let's look into that. Okay, that makes sense. So I read a lot of different books, and I bring the supportive material with me when I go to the doctor, and I advise my patients to do that. I say, go to,
be proactive.
Yeah, go to lifeextension.org, look it up. They give you all this information. They have PDFs, they have medical research. They tell you why you should be taking these tests, and you go to your physician and you say, hey, I want these fucking tests done. There you go.
Woo! All right.
Okay.
I got a fuck out of it. All right.
Okay, there you go.
You've crossed over.
But you have to advocate for yourself. Advocate for your children, for your parents. You know, physicians today, it's not that they don't care. They just don't have the time. They have 5 minutes of your time. That's why, like, if you go to a dietitian, I give you an hour and a half in our first visit and an hour and a follow-up. Okay? So
that's what it takes to get to know them.
So I have the time, and we go through all these things, and sometimes I say, go back to your doctor and ask him blah, 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 this. Ask him this. Ask him, this is how you're feeling. Does your doctor know you have all these symptoms? Probably not, because they don't have the time to ask. They just want to know, and they say, okay, there's a pill for that. There's a pill for this. So they're medicating you, which is, again, covering up your symptoms and not...
It's a process. They fall into it, and they some criteria, and they just put you
now,
in
not
line.
all doctors are like that.
No,
and,
not at all.
You know, and there are a lot of good doctors who don't want to be like that, but you know what? They have to pay their bills. So I get it. So I say hire a dietitian, hire someone with experience. Be careful. I want to say this to everyone who's listening out there. The reason why I advocate so much for dietetics, I'm the president of the Southwest Dietetic Association, is because people will go to their personal trainer, Adam, and they will ask them these important questions. And the personal trainer, who, God bless them, they took an online course, they took, one of these health courses. They may not have the background. They may not know your condition.
Right.
They're great. They're great at what they do. I cannot do one of these crazy training sessions, okay? But they're telling you go on a vegan diet. They're telling you go raw. They're telling you do all this stuff, but they don't know your health. They don't know your conditions. They don't know the implications. And they can cause some serious damage in your mental status and your health status.
Yeah.
All right? They can make some recommendations on supplements. I have to carry liability insurance. I have to carry all sorts of insurances, okay? I have to get my credits every couple of years. I have to show the state and the national government that I have held up to a certain standard, just like a mental health provider, right? You have to do this. These people have nothing to lose. And that's what pisses me off, is that there are people out there in the area who are saying, follow a vegan diet. Yeah, do this, do that. I know, I wrote a book. Well, where is your education? Where did you get your information from? I had a fellow colleague telling me that one of the personal trainers, she loves him, but he's telling everybody to eat chicken fat and to eat chicken skin. And she's like, that's trans fat. And some of these people have heart conditions, and they shouldn't be, right, and they shouldn't be eating that kind of stuff. And so, we're looking for just evidence to support this. This is what this guy's sending out in his blog. In the state of Florida, you are not allowed, it is a law that you are not allowed to practice anything without a license, medical. So if someone is talking to you about nutrition, that is illegal because they don't have a license. Unless they are a licensed, registered dietitian.
Practicing out of their scope.
Okay? They are not practicing what they're supposed to. If you're a personal trainer, focus on personal training. Don't tell your clients about how to, what supplement they should be taking, what test, because it's outside of your scope and you can be doing some damage. Maybe what you need to do is send them to some good websites, tell them this is where you can get some information, get them competent. I'm not saying that you may not know. You may have read some good books.
Right.
But unless you have studied nutrition and you have a degree and you have sat down and you have gone through a year of internship, okay, learning about these different diseases and then have experience.
And sitting with clients for
and
years.
sitting with clients with years. I mean, when somebody comes to me, I've dealt with people with HIV and AIDS. I've helped people with diabetes. I've helped people not just lose weight. That's not just what I do. So I'm all about the holistic. I think your diet, getting back to the first thing you asked me, your diet, yes, it's nutrition. It's what you take in. It's everything spiritual, holistic. It's a balance, right? It's meditation. It could be everything just to help you get in balance. Because if you're not eating correctly, nothing else is going to work. Your foundation of your house is going to fall down. It's going to have a big sinkhole and just plummet one day when you have that freaking heart attack.
Yep.
And you're sitting in your hospital bed with an IV, and you're saying, looking at your spouse and saying, how did this happen? Well, this is how it happened. And you don't always have to be overweight for that to happen.
That's right.
If you had a heart attack, have a calcium score, which is basically like an ultrasound where they look at the splice, or an MRI, I'm sorry, where they look at the splice of your valves. Because sometimes people come to me and they have really, really high triglycerides or they have really high cholesterol, but that could just be their body. And they're on all these statin drugs and things like that that are not doing any good.
And these blood tests are cheap as shit, too.
And these blood tests are cheap. Go and get these blood tests. Pay out of your pocket. There's a few other places, and I'm sorry, I apologize. I can always give it to you, Adam. I don't recall, aside from the Life Extension, some other blood testing. But there's labs in the area, and you call and get the cash.
How do people get a hold of you? I think that's the important
So if they go to my website, the virtual, VIRTUAL, R like in Robert, D as in David, S as in Sam.com, the virtual RDS.com, I have a link and you can send me an email.
Okay.
And I usually answer, and you can stay in contact. I also have a Twitter account, so you can follow me on Twitter. I'll post things out there now and then when I find useful, right?
Yeah, well, please keep it up.
But I know we're running late, so.
No, we're over it. It's great. I want to, actually I have, last question, and we'll end it. I love cooking, and I'm a chef. I stand by extra virgin olive oil. Is grapeseed or sunflower or coconut oil better? What oil is best to cook with?
Oh, God. Okay, olive oil I know has a low, like it smokes when you put it on high. So like if you're frying something or cooking something. So I use olive oil, like if I take chicken and I put chicken in the oven and I'll bread it, I'll drizzle some olive oil on top to kind of give it that crispiness, and that works really well in salads. I've used avocado oil, but I like the coconut oil for frying because it doesn't have it has a higher temperature that you can get it to before it starts smoking. Okay. So those are all really healthy to go by, and you have to find as a chef what works best for you. But they're all very healthy oils, and everything in moderation. Everything in moderation. That's about it.
Including discussing nutrition.
Yes. Yes.
Honestly, I could go on for another 2 hours with you. Would you like to do this regular? I'd love to have you back on the show, like, a lot.
Sure. So your viewers can send in questions, and I can be more prepared. So I apologize. But thank you so much. But there's so much out there that people don't know about. Yeah. And that's my goal, is let's disseminate the information. You're an adult, but if you're educated, you can make a better decision. Okay, you can fight the people that are out there and say, this is what I want my kids to eat, not what you tell me I have to feed them, but this is what I want my kids to eat. Okay, I don't want them to eat TV dinners filled with shit. I want them to eat good, healthy food, and it should be sold at a reasonable price. And you know what? If they can't, then you need to make it. You need to take a Sunday or a Saturday, take 1 or 2 hours, have all your food out there, and prep it for the week. Do some frozen foods, heat it up during the week. Buy baked potatoes, sweet potatoes. Those go in the oven. I mean, there's so much. And look up on Pinterest. Pinterest has a lot of really cool ideas.
Yeah.
Okay? And
Yeah.
it's free, and recipes.
I mean, get confident is what I'm hearing.
Gluten-free stuff. Yeah. I mean, there's
I
tons
talk
of stuff.
about, happiness is found. We start with getting competent to confidence, that we find enthusiasm.
Right.
Therein lies happiness. And most of what we discuss here is about getting competent, about finding out about you, from your hormone level, blood test, diving in and grabbing hold and getting competent, not listening to everything that's just berated at you, but actually
Right.
getting in and knowing yourself personally. I could go on again with hours with you, Michelle. This has been a great conversation. Great questions with everybody.
Great, thank you.
Participating. Don't go anywhere. We'll keep chatting. I'm just going to shut this down. So, again, they can find you at
thevirtualrds.com.
Okay.
Or you can look up Michele Silano, and you'll find me on the web as well.
Any last, that was some passionate shit coming out of you at the end. I was not going to stop that. We share in that mission of telling people that, look, the day of the trust your doctor is dead, that we have to be proactive in ourselves and what we're thinking, what we're taking, even what we're being labeled with diagnosis. So, you're wired like me, and you're a cognitive rampager. If I've seen when you went on one here,
I did go on a rampage.
You went off, which is what I love.
Right.
The fact that passion came out of you, and I got a shit out of you too.
You did, and fucking shit. That's right.
I did. But that passion shows in what you do and how you care for people. And just as I feel about mental health, grabbing the reins of that can change your life. Just like you, I agree that grabbing the reins of your nutrition, of your life, can change your life dramatically.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate your passion.
And there's hope. Don't ever lose hope. Look for help. If you're not happy with your body image, or if you're not happy with what you're feeling, go seek help. There's a lot of free sources out there.
Yeah. Okay?
Just get help from someone who knows. Don't waste your time, because sometimes that's the frustrating part, when you go to the wrong people.
Yep.
And then you get bad information.
Well, that's therapists. You go see 1, 2, 3 therapists, and they all are awful, and you think, fuck it.
Right.
When you got to keep
Why am I going to spend that money? And same with the dietitian. You know what? Interview your dietitian. I always talk to people before they come to see me, and I say, hey, this is my philosophy. This is how I do things. If you don't like if we're not a good connection, please don't come see me, because I don't want to take your money. I don't.
Because they're not intrinsically motivated.
Right.
So to end with the podcast officially, really, what is your life philosophy?
I think my philosophy is I always try to do the best that I can. I don't have any regrets. And I like to help people, so I think it's always about helping people. And I put my pillow at night. Put my head on my pillow at night and go to sleep and have a really sound sleep. And I think if I can do that every night, then I've done the right thing during the day. That's how I like to feel about life.
Wow.
So I can make mistakes. I'm human. I may not say the right things all the time, and I may not act the right way all the time. I'm human. But I try to fix it, or I try to do something so I can put my head on that pillow and go to sleep. Because I don't know how some people live with themselves. I really don't.
I couldn't agree more.
So.
And a lot of those start with doctor in the beginning. Sorry.
Doctor and real estate agents.
Next show, and we'll dive into that. So we'll keep chatting for a little bit, but don't go anywhere. I appreciate you joining me tonight on the Cognitive Rampage. We're going to shut it down here tonight. We went over, but again, thank you, Michele Silano, for being here. Virtualrds.com. You can find Michele, wonderful dietitian, and then some. Again, read the accolades, but it's been great getting to know you more, and we'll keep doing this.
Thank you.
More,
we will, definitely.
I appreciate everybody joining me tonight. I'll see you next Sunday.
Have a great week, everyone.